Hello, my name is Gwendolyn Gaddis, and I recovered from crack cocaine, alcohol, and prostitution. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm the youngest of 8 children, 5 girls and 2 boys. I experienced genuine love in my family. Both of my parents were there, and my childhood was really great. Then growing up, we were always in church, and then at 16, I had a baby. His name is Christopher, a young man. Right now, he's grown. I was in high school. Well, no, let's go past. I was in high school and I had my child. And then I went to community college, and some man caught my attention, or I caught his attention, nonetheless. It was a bait and switch when I realized how the enemy had set me up. So with that, love became perverted, and I was introduced to cocaine. And at the beginning of the relationship, it wasn't abusive. Then I moved in with him and didn't know he had a girlfriend. So then, back in those days, they called it wife-in-laws, okay? Then it turned into abuse and drug dependency. So I left my child with my parents because we were coming to Florida to bring his brother down here to work on the ports. However, it turned into sex trafficking, which is pimping. It's the same thing, right? Being lured and used in sexual content and introduced to the strip clubs. That started off just in the go-go bars, and then it went from the go-go bars to the topless bars, and then from the topless bars to stripping, nude bars. So with that being said, the relationship turned real abusive, and every form of abuse that you can imagine. I don't want to be too graphic, but just to let you know that sodomy was also included in that. So moving forward, finally made it down to Florida, Tampa, and the lifestyle continued in the abuse and the drug dependency. So with him supplying the drugs, it's like if I didn't get up to go to work, I would get beat. I have scars, and I was cut on the back of my legs where he wrapped it up and sent me back out there. I didn't think I was a prostitute because I didn't walk the streets. However, I worked in the clubs, and it's the same thing. I sold myself. And then it became to the point where I just gave in to that lifestyle, and I sold myself to the devil. So I began manipulation, operating in witchcraft, meaning deception, lying, scheming, and manipulating. And I did it well, so I wouldn't get beat, you see? So after all that, it became what I believed, who I was. So what I did was who I was. And I had no identity after all that.
So when would you say that the switch happened to where you said, okay, I'm gonna just give myself to this lifestyle, like this is who I am? Like what point, what age, like what made the switch happen?
The switch happened when I came to Florida, and I had nobody down here, no family.
So you felt alone?
Yes, I was alone, not lonely, but by this time I became what I was beaten into being. That makes sense?
Was your family concerned about you?
Yes, my family was concerned, and I would like, sometimes I would call my parents and tell them that I needed some money, right? And to keep from getting beat. And they would send it to me. They sent me exactly whatever I asked for, my mom and my dad said she just prayed that I wasn't cold or sleeping in the streets or hungry, But mothers always know when something's going on with their children. But one thing about it, and I'm grateful for, is that my parents and my family never gave up on me. You know, in spite of the state that I was in, state of mind, and the state in the United States. You know what I'm saying? But they never gave up on me. So to be the best that I could be in that lifestyle, that's what I did. I surrendered to my sanity for the sake of peace during that time. That makes sense? To keep from getting beat or cut or water poured on or black eyes busted in the head. You know, you don't want to, the only thing you can do is what they want you to do. You know?
So what was daily life like for you whenever you went through that stage of being a sex slave?
So, daily life was getting up, if you ever went to sleep, getting high, using drugs, going to the strip club, making money. He's sitting there or somewhere in the crowd, so you're always being watched. People think a lot of times that, oh, you could have got out of that, or why didn't you just leave? Well, guess what? It's not always that easy, because once the mind is conditioned, you know, all you know is what they show you or what you're introduced to. And then if you have somebody watching you 24 hours a day, where you gonna run to? If you go to the bathroom, he got other girlfriends watching you and making sure that you get high in the bathroom so you can come out, make some money, and do it all over again. And there's instances where you may not even go to bed at night. You know what I mean? So days run into days, and days run into weeks, and the weeks run into months. So there could be 2 or 3 days where you don't go to sleep because you're constantly making money or having to go turn a trick somewhere, you know, to support your needs, you don't even have money to pay for a hotel room because you done smoked it all up or whatever. I shot up a little bit of drugs too, and I didn't like pills, just crack and alcohol and cocaine, you know, at this point. So.
And did you grow up in the church?
I did grow up in the church. It was so fantastic. My childhood was awesome. We grew up in the church. We were always busy in the church. We always, whenever they had banquets and things like that, my family was the one who did all the decorations and the centerpieces and stuff like that. We used to have fashion shows. I was in the Girl Scouts. I didn't like that too long. So whatever I wanted, I always got it. If I didn't like it, I was able to quit. So it felt like I never finished anything until I got older, you know what I mean? And God delivered me from a whole lot of things. But I thank God that I was able to keep my mind, that He kept my mind. He kept my mind in the midst of all of that. So yes, growing up in church was good. We were like missionaries. We learned to give. I learned to give at an early age and to do for others. So.
Would you say that you had a true relationship with Christ back then?
You know what? When I was a kid, there's this thing I used to do, right? So I would be sitting outside with my friends or my cousins or whatever, and I would do my eyebrows like this. I'm like, look what me and Jesus can do, right? And it seemed like the clouds would go over the sun. And then I do my eyebrows like this, and then the sun would come back out. I'm like, yep, me and Jesus, we cool like that. You know, not cool, but at that age, I was like, it was so good, you know, and I would have dreams and visions, and I seen angels, right? As a kid, like I loved Jesus. Even as a kid, I knew him. Even I want to say at least 4 years old, I know about Jesus in my heart and in my mind. I used to like to sing. I played the piano, and was in choirs and things of that nature. So yeah, even at an early age, I had a relationship with him.
So in the time where you were, you know, sex trafficked and abused, did you feel like he was still there with you?
I did. I knew he was with me, but it was like, it felt like being in a box and you just don't know how to get out of it. Now, being arrested 26 times, right? And going to jail was like a relief. You know, you get a break from all that, regain some strength. Even in jail, I would read my Bible, and I would sing in the courtyard, in the basketball yard. But I remember a particular time, a couple of times, where I'd be in the bed sleeping with my partner at that time, and the enemy came for me on more than one occasion. The Grim Reaper, right? You remember the Scooby-Doo movies? I don't know if y'all know this, but when they go up the wall, and then it was such a big ghost that would go up the wall, and he'd be across the ceiling. That's what the Grim Reaper was like. And I seen the angels come and snatch him away. And I was paralyzed, like I couldn't move. I couldn't wake up the person that was next to me. And I'm like, oh my God, like the devil really wants my soul. You know, he wanted me to die and to commit suicide on more than one occasion, just to escape and get away from the torture the mental torture, emotional torture, and the physical abuse that I was going through. So, yeah.
What was that turning point like when you were shifting out of that? Like, what was it like for you? And do you feel like it was God, like, that did a complete shifting you to come out of that lifestyle completely?
You know what had happened was, he went to prison. And there's another part to it, but he went to prison and I met a man. So I was on a break from the strip club for lunch break, of course, lunch, right? It wasn't food involved. But anyway, and I seen this dude, I was living in a hotel, and I kept seeing him the same time every day. And so I'm waiting for the dope, because I used to call and get a delivery, right? And I kept seeing this guy, I'm like, you know what? Dope man taking too long. Let me just talk to this cat right here, because I know that he's got to be doing something. He's riding his bicycle every 20 minutes. He's coming and going. So I'm like, dude, I know you holding something. Let me hold something right there. And he started laughing. I said, I ain't laughing. I'm serious. I got to get this and go back to work. He's like, I like you. I want to be around you. I'm like, oh, no, you don't, because all I want is your money and your drugs, right? And so I met a man. His name was Robert. And being introduced to him, the shift came when I started liking him, and I didn't want him to be like the other men that I was involved in. So he began, seeing me, and we sleep in bed, but I wouldn't have sex with him because I wanted him to be different than anybody else. But because I was the aggressive one and I came out of the abusive relationship, I wanted to fight him. Everything was fighting and sex. You make up and have angry sex. But he wasn't like all the other men that I met. And so this one particular time I was trying to fight him, and he grabbed me from behind, and I'm trying to fight him from backwards. And he was like, babe, love doesn't hurt. I'm like, oh yes it does. And I'm trying to fight him. But that moment shift came when he said, no, love doesn't hurt. Love is unconditional. And I felt something inside my spirit pop. And it broke. And then, because he demonstrated unconditional love, and today he's my husband. So that's where the shift took place for me.
Okay, what would you say to someone who's in that lifestyle and feels like they can't get out of it?
I would say to that person, if you feel like you can't get out of it, just talk to Jesus, and he'll make a way. He'll send somebody your way to deliver you out of the grips of darkness.
And what advice did you need to hear during that time?
Well, people will say, you can stop, I'm praying for you and all that thing, but the key to that is the person has to be ready. The person has to be ready to change. If you're not ready to change, it's not going to happen.
How hard would you say it was to stay clean, and what was your process of maintaining your sobriety?
How hard was it to stay clean? Because not being around healthy people, being around people who were doing the same thing I was, and it was just like I felt locked in until I was like, okay, I'm going to really give this thing a try. So after being on probation, probably about, I was arrested 26 times, so on probation probably about 20 times, I was like, okay, I'm going to finally do what they say. Go to meetings, stop using, and work the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. And I was like, okay, I'm going to really do it this time. And I did. So my spiritual experience, my spiritual awakening was I was crying out to God because I had like 90 days clean. And I cried out to God. I'm like, I'm so tired of this, right? Because I relapsed. So that night I was in the house had rats, and I start praying after a $10 rock wanted me to take my life. And I turned out the lights. I'm like, God, I need a sign. I need you to tell me something right now. I need you to help me right now. And I heard all this noise going on, right? So I turned the lights back on because I was asking God to talk to me or give me a sign. I felt like Gideon in the Bible. But I was like, give me a sign. And he did. This rat got caught in a rat trap. I heard bam. I was like, oh, wait a minute, God, now. I ain't asked for all this. So I turned the light on, and this rat was like dingling and dangling in the rat trap. And it was half dead and half alive. And God said to me, I heard him very clearly say, if you continue to use drugs, this will be you. Half dead and half alive. And I'm like, God, I heard your voice. And I know you're going to say some other things to me, but if you don't ever talk to me, because I was scared. But if you don't ever say nothing else, I'm good with that. You know? So if you want to get clean, if you want to recover, not only from drugs, but from anything in life that you feel like you can't escape from, just cry. If you really want it, he'll make it happen for you. You know? I cried for a long time.
How many times did you go back to that lifestyle? Like, was it just a one and done, or the process?
Which lifestyle? From the prostitution or the drugs, all that?
Whichever you
It lasted for, I want to say, 16 and 17 years, if not longer. So,
What was the rekindling process with your son?
the rekindling process was this. When God, I cried out to God that night, March 28th, 2003. 2003. And I was delivered, right? That started the process. But I began to seek God's face, and then I got clean. I was going to meetings. I was working the steps and got a relationship rekindled, renewed my relationship with Jesus, okay? And began living according to the word because I wanted to be a better version of myself. And I had trust issues and self-esteem issues and self-worth issues. I just broken pieces floating around, and God put me back together again. So when I made up my mind that I didn't want to live that way no more, it was a process of deliverance that took place and recovery in all areas of my life, because I began to allow God to touch those hurt places and not depend on man. I didn't look at nobody no more. You know, man, I put all my dependency in Christ. Now, when that happened, do you think the enemy just gonna let you go just like that? It's not gonna happen, right? I'm sitting on the porch. One of the people that I used to get money from drives by, and I'm like, oh my God. This was a time when I needed some money to pay my bills. And guess what happened? I was like, nope, not doing it. He's like, hey. I'm like, no. No, thank you. So,
how did you gain your self-esteem back as a woman after giving yourself to different men for different things?
Forgiveness. I found my identity in Christ. And it's what God says I am, not what I've done is who I am. What I've done is what I did, you see? But my identity is in Christ, not in my brokenness, because when God does a thing, he does it, the whole thing. He does it completely, right? In pieces, because he can't give it to you or heal you all at one time, you see? So my confidence became in Christ, and then my family never gave up on me. They loved me until even now. And the young lady asked me about my relationship with my son, and it's good. But with the delivery process, God healed me in all those places, all those broken places. And with that happening, I was the woman that I should have always been. But renewed mind, a renewed soul, renewed emotions, and a renewed spirit. You see? So I was able to walk in a wholeness that I hadn't experienced since I was a child. But my identity is in Christ. Not what people think about me no more, what they say about me no more, what I think about myself. So I had to forgive myself, and now I am that mother, I am that sister, I am that friend, I am that woman.
Do you think that you would be who you are today had you not gone through those things? Do you feel like those things molded you into the woman that you are, or do you feel like God did it?
God did it. God does it. He did it. And I believe that because of my past, and I had to work through that, because I realized that I can't allow my past to dictate my future. So I had to, become emotionally whole and forgive, because the person who did that to me, I can go through life blaming, if he wouldn't have did this, this wouldn't have happened to me. If she wouldn't have did this, this wouldn't have happened to me. If I wouldn't have made this decision, then I wouldn't be in that place over there. Those things have to die. You understand what I'm saying? They have to die. And at some point, you have to have some confidence in yourself. But you can't get it by yourself. You have to have positive people in your life. You have to have a relationship with Christ. And if you don't, you'll go back to the same vomit or the same mistakes, the same decision making, and the same brokenness that God brought you out of. So there's a maintenance that has to take place. You have to maintain your freedom. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. That's if you want to be free. If you don't want to be free, you can keep manipulating, you can keep lying, you can keep blaming everybody for everything that goes on in your life, and you'll get the same results.
So when you say forgiveness, because a lot of people have questions about forgiveness, like how do you forgive, or will I still feel the same angry or hurt that I felt? Do you still feel that? Like, how do you forgive?
So what does forgiveness look like?
Yes.
Forgiveness looks like I'm praying a whole bunch of good stuff for you, even though I can't. Like, I really want you to die, right? Wish you was dead. But because the same grace and mercy that God has for me, I have to give it to somebody else. So I forgive them for the things that they've done. Now, the thing about forgiveness is this: when you can pray for that person and go to them if they're still alive or not, and ask for forgiveness, whether they receive it or not, that's on them, as long as your side of the street is clean. But however, if you have unforgiveness in your heart and you pray for forgiveness for this person, right? And let's say you encounter that person again, what's the condition of your heart? That's when you'd be like, and you still got some forgiveness to do. You know what I mean? It's a process. It's not going to happen. You're going to be joyous and free just because you pray for a person for 2 weeks. But let them get in your face. And you'll be like, oh, I thought I forgave. I got a little bit more to go. You see? It's real. But the process, like you just have to stay in the presence of the Lord. But what happens is you get to strengthen your love walk. You get to strengthen your love walk, especially towards the person who you may have resentments, offenses with, so.
All right, so if you could give somebody who's in your position or anybody who's recovering from anything, some final advice, what would it be?
I think it's important to live by principles.
And what principles?
Spiritual principles.
Okay.
Yes, you have to have, because there's a void in our soul. Whenever we've been broken or traumatized, there's a void in your soul and your spirit that needs to be filled. And it can only be filled with spiritual food, because everything else in the world didn't satisfy that void. It didn't quench your thirst. You have to get some spiritual food, and that's the word. Like, the Bible is the only thing that can renew your mind. I've tried everything there is to try. I've done anything that you can freaking imagine. Yes, I said that. But none of that satisfies. It's only a temporary high. But when you get with Jesus, that's the best high you could ever get. You don't chase him. He's there with open arms waiting for you. It's just amazing how When God calls you out of the darkness, like he called you out by your name. And one thing that stuck out to me when I was reading the story about Lazarus, right? The reason why he called him out by his name, because if he had called him, just said, come forth, all them other spirits would have came with him. All the other dead people. But he called you out. When he called you out by your name, out of the darkness, believe me, you gonna know that it's the voice of the Lord calling you out.